Good morning. Welcome into Five Clubs here on Golf Channel. You can also listen. That is PGA Tour Radio Channel 92 on Sirius XM, a Wednesday edition of our program. I am Gary Williams, and this program always brought to you by Century Insurance. They are right by you. If you have business insurance needs, they are the answer, not to mention what they do with respect to the game of golf, investing in things like the First Tee and the United States Golf Association. Golf Pride, all my grips. New clubs for me. I'm headed to Chicagoland, and I have always trusted Golf Pride, and I'm looking forward to those Align Max grips on my clubs to be playing golf the next couple of days. Peter Millar, this jacket, this shirt, this pocket square can all be yours. Looks like the cruise line, doesn't it? PeterMillar.com, unbelievable sale right now at PeterMillar.com. And of course, the Cradle of American Golf, we appreciate their great support. Pinehurst Resort, every time I go there, there's something else to do, whether it's on the course or off. Always a good reason to make plans to go to Pinehurst. We got a lot to try to get to. Our getaway day here on a Wednesday, that includes dogs. That includes picks, which have been dogs for the most part for kind of half the staff here. Plus Bob Harig, senior writer at Sports Illustrated, fresh off of covering another major championship, of which he has covered, I believe, probably at least 100. I'm guessing right around that number, if not more. His thoughts on what we just witnessed, what we are witnessing, but also kind of the media and the relationship with the elite level of the game of golf. It's been an interesting year as it relates to some moments that we've had, some things that have kind of bubbled up. So we will get his perspective. He's going to join me here in about 15 minutes. But yesterday, I'm scrolling through some different things, and I see this little video pop up on Instagram, and this is from the Senior Open Championship at Sunningdale, which is a delightful place. On the left, Colin Montgomery. On the right, Bernhard Langer. You're probably familiar with their golf swings because Colin Montgomery, 632 starts on the DP World Tour, 248 on PGA Tour Champions, 142 on the PGA Tour, 871 starts for him, and that guy right there at 67 years of age, well, that guy has 1,031 of those starts. Combined, 1,900 starts between those two old war horses, and I mean that affectionately. And I love the fact that Monty is rocking that Europe Ryder Cup bag, both of them victorious Ryder Cup captains. Think about those two guys. Think about their journey in the game of golf. And I also saw a video where somebody asked Colin Montgomery right there the last time he paid for a round of golf, and he said, I don't remember. He's been playing card-in-pocket golf, like real golf, like with a pencil, like, oh no, that wasn't very good. I'm just going to drop down and play another. He's been doing that for a long, long time, more than 4 decades. And in the case of Bernhard Langer, the same. So look at them, so far advanced in their journey, but still on the right-hand side of a practice tee at Sunningdale, digging in for another competition. And meanwhile, back here in the United States, the U.S. Junior Amateur is going on at Trinity Forest. And these are a bunch of boys who are beginning their journey in competitive golf, and they have no idea where it's going to go. For some of them, it's going to go to the highest level. For many others, wherever that ceiling is going to be, it's going to come sooner than later, like those other two guys that we just saw that footage of. And when I think about the U.S. Junior, I'm reminded, since Bob Harig of Sports Illustrated is coming on this program here in a few minutes, of a Sports Illustrated cover, which is now 40 years old. It was the son of a tour player. That tour player. Has anybody seen that? I know many of you have. That is Gary Nicklaus. Donged right there is the Nicklaus. That was 1985. Oh, by the way, the old man in the smaller photograph on the cover of Sports Illustrated, which he was on the cover of many times, would win the Masters a little bit over a year after that photo was taken and put on the cover. I am of the same vintage as Gary Nicklaus, and when he was on that cover, which dropped on the driveway of 326 Grandview Circle in Ridgewood, New Jersey, that particular year, I went, oh my gosh, look at him. He's a prodigy. And those short shorts, were those Ocean Pacific shorts? I'm not sure. Everybody had OP shorts back then. Corduroy, by the way, and you're going, really? Corduroy shorts? They were something. I remember when that really landed on my driveway and I looked at that and went, oh my gosh, look at him. We have no idea where these young men who are in Dallas, Texas, and one of the other reasons I bring this up is that there are a handful of names who were playing at the U.S. Junior Am. You looked at the last name and you went, I'm familiar with that Kuchar, and I'm familiar with that Byrd, as in Jonathan Byrd. And Scott Jachesky's son, who is Trevor, who's a very fine young junior. I don't profess to know how good these kids are. They're good enough to be in the field there. And then there's Woods, as in Charlie. And I've never spoken about Charlie Woods on this program because kind of what's the point? I don't really know other than seeing the kid play some shots at the parent-child in the month of December. And the one thing that I have been tickled by when I do see Charlie Woods hit a golf shot, and really it's even before he hits the golf ball, are his mannerisms and his idiosyncrasies, which it looks like he's lampooning his old man, but he's not. He's just being him, which gets me to something that has always been interesting to me, and that is genetics, and athletic genetics, and DNA. And there's a book that was written by a guy, David Epstein, who has written two books that I find to be two of the better books that I recommend to people for various reasons. One is Range, and it's about how generalists thrive in a specialized world. And I recommend that to a lot of people who are beginning their journey, whatever that journey is going to be, whatever that vocation is going to be, because it's about the idea of trying everything. Because people who have the ability to do many things have great value. The other book is called The Sports Gene, and it's the most unvarnished view on athletic performance as it relates to DNA. In golf and DNA is very interesting because if you look historically at fathers and sons, there are many sons who have made the pursuit like their dads did, and you go all the way back to when the idea of championship golf began, and you can think about old Tom Morris and obviously his son, who were the two first great champions, and immediately thereafter was Willie Park, senior and junior. But that was a long, long time ago. And since then to present day, the truth is that fathers, and mostly it's been the fathers who have been the ones who have been more on the Hall of Fame side of things, as opposed to the sons who tried that pursuit. And that gets to one of the interesting dynamics about sons pursuing the same thing that their dads did. Name on the bag. And I hope that none of these kids, whether it's the ones who are in Dallas, Texas, or any of the other sons of fathers who play at an elite level, feel like the name on the bag is a burden, that they feel it is more joyful than that. But think about it, whether it is the Stocktons, Dave Sr. and Jr., or Al Geiber or Brent Geiberger, and there have been plenty others, Kevin Stadler. By the way, Kevin's mannerisms as it relates to his old man Craig, uncanny. Truly, all the way down to kind of the pouty walk, like you think he just made another bogey when maybe he's made a birdie. I loved watching Kevin Stadler play. And Kevin Stadler got to the highest level. He was truly, to get to the PGA Tour is an amazing accomplishment, and there have been others, and I'm not going to name them all because I'm going to leave a number of them out. But if you compare it relative to other sports, think about the NBA, and whether you want to start by talking about what's going on right now. And yes, nepotism is something that exists in all walks of life. Dad can probably help you get a job, as LeBron James did with his son. That's just the plain truth. But your dad can't help keep you employed unless he's the boss, truly is the boss. Because in this particular sport, the meritocracy of the game ultimately will flesh you out. Nepotism with names on bags like Nicholas or Player or Irwin or Miller, all of whom had sons who were very good players and got them starts. But eventually those starts will dry up if the numbers in the boxes on that card are not representative of being good enough. Because as I said, you look at other sports, think about the NFL. If you start thinking about fathers and sons, it's like, oh my gosh, that guy is really good and his dad was really good. Now, part of it is the size of the workforce. NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, there are more jobs. But Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Sr., and by the way, for nobody who saw Barry Bonds' dad play baseball, Bobby Bonds, he was a great player. And I can go on and on and on, and Steph Curry and Del Curry. There were a lot of very good. But the one that I think of most is Cameron Hayward. A lot of Pittsburgh Steelers fans out there. And Cameron Hayward is on the back end of his NFL career. I watched his dad play high school football. Craig Ironhead Hayward, who never left the field my junior year. He was from Passaic High School in Passaic, New Jersey. Was the running back, middle linebacker, place kicker, and punter. Went to the University of Pittsburgh. And oh, by the way, his son plays for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Golf, though, has never allowed for a father and a son, at least in the modern era, to see either a borderline Hall of Fame career from the old man be matched by the son. The closest that we've seen, and it wasn't particularly close, and I'm not saying that to say they were ordinary careers, hardly. Jay Haas had one of the most productive careers, as evidenced by his pension, that you'll ever see. And his son Bill had an excellent, and still plays on the PGA Tour periodically, and won a tour championship. But for whatever reason, in terms of them doing it and doing a lot of it, we haven't seen it. So whatever happens with the young men whose names are on the bag, who are playing in Dallas, Texas, Kuchar and Byrd and Woods, who knows? But it's a curiosity that we'll have with them going forward. But most importantly, and I'll get back to what I said about burden, I hope none of those kids, whether it's them or any of the other ones, feel that. Because there are obviously inherent advantages to your dad being who they are in terms of what it might provide you. But most importantly, I hope they get out of it what I got out of it, because the reason I'm in this chair is because I fell in love with golf because of my dad. Because I realized at a very young age, oh my God, this is uninterrupted time with the old man. And that existed into my 40s. And I hope for all you sons, and more importantly, dads, that relationship between you and the game and your son is not only nourishing, but anything but a burden, whether you're an elite player or not. All right, we take a break. When we continue, Bob Harig from Sports Illustrated, he's covered so many majors. We are now watching somebody win majors at a clip over the last couple of years that is uncommon. We saw Rory do this from 2011 to 2014, and then it dried up for a decade. Not only talking about Scheffler, but also the relationship between the best players and the media in present day. He joins me, plus a little bit later on, Club 5, our picks, dogs. It's a busy Wednesday on 5 Clubs here on Golf Channel. Also, Channel 92, Sirius XM's PGA Tour Radio. Back right after this. Welcome back in. It is a Wednesday edition of 5 Clubs here on Golf Channel. Also, it is Channel 92, Sirius XM's PGA Tour Radio. This segment is brought to you by Pinehurst. I know it's about that time of the year where all the kids, the U.S. kids, descend on. I have all these competitions. I was there several years ago, and it's just indicative of what Pinehurst is. It's for all ages. They've got something for everybody. They're always adding things. The newest being that clubhouse at Pinehurst, number 10, down in the sand mines. All right, joining me now, senior writer from SI.com. He, of course, Bob Harig, joining me. He's home off of another major championship cover. Bob, good morning. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for doing this. You know, I mentioned, what is the number of majors that you've covered?
You put me on the spot. It's over 100. I think that was my 25th Open.
Wow.
I've been to more Masters and U.S. Opens and PGAs than that. So, yeah, it's getting up there. It's it's not Cal Ripken, but it's it's not bad. So.
No, you were one of the sage senior guys under the big top every week. You've seen a lot of change. You've seen a lot of change in terms of the players you're covering. You've seen a tremendous amount of change, Bob, in terms of media, new media, digital side, streaming, podcasters, influencers. But I want to start with the guy who's the biggest influence on filling up notebooks right now, and that is always been the number one player in the world. Sometimes it's harder to get things from him, but the obligations are there more for the best player to speak to the assembled media. Scottie Scheffler, has he always been as interesting as it appears that he is becoming? I personally think he's always been interesting, but give me your view of his progression in terms of his willingness to share from the outset to where we currently are.
Yeah, look, I think it's taken a little bit of time. I mean, at the beginning, I wouldn't say that he was that interesting. That doesn't mean he's not. It's just that he wasn't offering up much, and he's just got more comfortable with it. I think he just needed a little time to get to understand what was being asked. He's going to get some crazy questions. He's going to get a lot of questions. He's going to be asked to do this often. As he's evolved, it's gotten better. Look, he's not always great after tournament rounds. And that's why what he said last week was interesting, because I think it was misconstrued in some ways. He's incredibly competitive. It means a lot to him every week. You can see it out there sometimes when he gets frustrated. And when these guys come right off the course, I think we understand. Sometimes it's tough. It's tough to answer questions. There really isn't much of a cooling off period like there is in other sports. And then at a place like the Open, there's quite the car wash that these guys, all the rights holders, and then they come to the print media and there's, 50 of us there or whatever. And some of the questions are the same. They've just answered 3 times and, they're worn out. I get it. After you win and you're in the media center and you're sitting down and you can take it all in, I think it's a lot easier to be reflective. So he's gotten really good at that, I think. And, he's asked a lot. We have to understand sometimes they're just not going to always have it. And, as we go along, I think he's gotten better.
Bob, I think the one thing that is among the interesting things about him is his insistence on focusing on either what just happened or maybe some broader thoughts about talking about a golf course, or when he got righteous about mud balls at the PGA. Mm-hmm. Have you ever covered anybody who refuses to genuflect on what has already been accomplished, or refuses to allow himself to be projected ahead of what it would feel like to accomplish whatever might be in front of him? How he stays very narrowly in the present. Have you ever covered anybody like that?
Look, I think Tiger was a lot like that. Tiger wasn't into big celebrations and he was in the moment. The amazing thing about him is even after he won, he was in the moment. He was thinking about the next one. I'm not sure that we appreciate that much. As much as we've put focus on the majors for someone like Tiger, when he went out the next week, he didn't treat that tournament any different. He wanted to win that one too, or whenever it was the next time up. So I think Tiger had a lot of that. There's been a lot of guys who are introspective in different ways. I mean, I think Rory has been that way. He's been very giving in that regard. These last issues that came up where he didn't want to deal with the media, I think are they're sort of an outlier. Those are different. A lot of Tiger, for all the times that he did media, there were times when he didn't want to talk. And sometimes he didn't. I think that's all understood. But for the most part, I think the best ones really do keep it about the moment. They're not moving too far ahead. And you brought it up. Scottie's been great at that. He's pretty much into the shot by shot. I know it's cliche, but he's into that shot by shot mantra, and is kind of, he wakes up every day with the idea of just enjoying the pursuit of practice and getting better, and doesn't seem to have goals. Doesn't seem to have like, I want to win X number of tournaments or X amount of money. He just wants to do the best he can every time. And that's what makes it kind of remarkable. He's on this run of top tens. You can see the frustration when he doesn't contend. It bothered him that his game was off at Oakmont. Couldn't figure out the driving quite as much. And it didn't take him long to get it turned around.
You mentioned Rory, and I'm with you. He's very valuable as a conduit, using the media as a conduit, and with the exception of that period after the Masters, which, at the Zurich, there was an affability to him. The PGA, because of what happened with the whole driver situation, I think put him in a chippy place that persisted a little bit. But overall, there's no doubt that he has been giving and been willing. Where do you think it goes from here? Because it seems like he's come out of that period, and he's got a fair amount of golf ahead of him globally for the balance of the year. Do you think that his willingness to give will be what it's been generally for the balance of his career, which has been a lot?
I do. I think we'll look back on that as a small blip. Stuff happens, and I think from our standpoint, we have to recognize that in the moment, maybe we're not happy about it, but when you look at the bigger picture, he's been genuinely very, very good to the media. His comments every day at Royal Portrush were really insightful, I thought. He opened up about what it was like to play in his home country, so close to his hometown. That was good. I think that's what we're looking for. And, it's not going to always go well. And like I was saying earlier, when you just come off the golf course and you haven't really had a chance to decompress sometimes. And again, also a lot of times these guys are standing, it's such a tiny little point, right? But they've been out there for 5 hours, walking a golf course, playing, not sitting down ever. Then they sit down for maybe a minute to sign their card, and they're asked to do all these interviews where they're standing. It's sort of like a little thing of mine. I'm like, why don't we let him have a seat so he can sit down and talk to us? I bet he'd be a lot. I'm talking not just him, any of them. I bet he'd be a lot more comfortable answering questions if he could just sit down. But they're doing that car wash of interviews standing up. It just prolongs their day. So, sometimes I think we have to look at the bigger picture. And I think going forward, you're going to see Roy will be just fine. He's been asked to do a lot here over these last few years. I think we have to remember that too. He was really kind of the spokesman for the PGA Tour throughout the whole LIV divide. He got asked a lot of questions about that. He was involved intimately with it as a member of the board. So, when you kind of step back and look at all that, it's been a pretty good response that he's given us over time.
And I want people to understand, when you use the term car wash, for people to realize the difference between the process for a professional golfer at that level as opposed to an NFL player. Locker rooms open after an NFL game, and you go to a locker, and it's one pool, and that's it. And you do not go down a line like a conveyor belt like you do with the PGA Tour. As you mentioned, all these media partners, radio and television. You might have multiple television partners that you're going to do interviews with. Then you do the scrum. So there is this process, which is not something that other professional athletes live with. I want to ask you about Phil, because Phil was the man under the big top. He didn't just like it, Bob, as you know, having covered him as long as you did, written books about him and Tiger. There was something that he enjoyed that. There was something performative about it. Now, it's mostly done through YouTube videos. Where do you think it will all go with Phil, let's say 5 years from now, in terms of his relationship and his presence and his voice in the game of golf?
Yeah, it's a great question, because if there had been no live golf, I think Phil, no matter what you think of live, or no matter what you think of that whole situation, he would have been in a much different position. I think he'd be sort of an elder statesman. He might be doing some TV. He'd be revered. I mean, look, it's 4 years ago he won a major at age 50 to become the oldest major champion. And I think he would be viewed differently. I find him to be a lot more cautious and reserved now. Like, he came to the mixed zone, they call it, at the Open one of the days after, I believe it was after the first round. And, his comments were kind of tepid. It wasn't the old Phil at all. He was almost defensive, and really over questions that weren't that probing, frankly. So, I think Phil can still be really, really gregarious when he wants to be. Obviously in the live environment, like when he's been on their broadcasts, he's more that way. He's more that way in their press conferences. To your question, I think a lot depends on what happens going forward now. Does live become more accepted? What's his playing role going forward? If he stops playing, does he step away? Does he still come to the majors? I think it'd do Phil a lot of good next year to try to qualify for the U.S. Open. He's not exempt anymore. It's the only major he won't be exempt for. That would be a great story. Make it or not. Try. And this is assuming the USGA doesn't give him a special exemption. They already did give him one, which obviously he ended up not needing. He was given the exemption for Torrey Pines, and then he went out and won the PGA, and it gave him 5 years, including that year, which now expired. So yeah, it's you're right. That's maybe one of the downsides to this whole thing, among many, is that we've lost a little piece of him.
Last thing, Brian Rolapp was rolled out at the Travelers, and talking to some people who covered the NFL who had a relationship with him. I had Kevin Clark on this program, who actually appealed to Brian Rolapp about career advice some years ago and has a very, very good positive impression on him. What has been the initial impression of the guy whose voice will lead the vision and the future of the PGA Tour?
I think for now it's been one of optimism. That maybe the tour needed an outsider that comes in with a different view. The way it's really kind of amazing to think that there have been only 4 commissioners. And aside from Joe Dye, the very first one, who was a USGA executive. They all were from within the PGA Tour, so to speak. Dean Beeman, and then Tim Fincham worked under Beeman, and Jay Monahan worked under Fincham. Look, there was probably nothing wrong with that procession. But the way things have gone, they have a for-profit entity now. SSG has invested all this money. It's a new business model, frankly. And they probably have to look at things a little bit differently. They've got to have some ideas that are profitable. And having someone that's probably been involved with the most successful sports league isn't a bad idea. And obviously we know Brian Rolapp has been intricately involved in their TV rights deals, all their media deals. The tour's going to face that too. And that's a big, big part of the future. Frankly, no sports league exists today without a robust television rights deal. So, they're going to want to enhance what they're doing and figure out ways to maximize that revenue stream. And he seems like someone who probably knows how to do that. He's obviously got relationships with all the networks and probably a lot of the new media, the streaming services as well, that they're going to also want to tap into.
No question. You think about the advancement the NFL has made with those particular services, those relationships for him very much already in place. Bob, thank you for your perspective. Enjoy a little downtime. I look forward to seeing you in the playoffs on the road. Thanks again.
Great. Thanks a lot, Gary. Be well.
All right, there's Bob Harig, senior writer, SISI.com. When we continue, it's a Wednesday morning. I'm wearing a jacket that would permit me in most clubs. We open the club on a Wednesday morning, plus dogs, picks as well to come, and some thoughts on the 3M, because it is Hail Mary time with just 2 weeks to go, and those precious, precious cards, not to mention spots in the playoffs. We're back here on a Wednesday on 5 Clubs right after this. Welcome back to Five Clubs here on this Wednesday morning on Golf Channel. And of course, it is channel 92 on Sirius XM's PGA Tour Radio. And this segment brought to you by Peter Millar. If you go to the website right now, unbelievable savings on all their summer items. That is petermillar.com. Fall items starting to sprinkle in. And yesterday at my front door were these. Now, they will be available for you very soon. The new Odeons. And quite comfortable, might I say. So among many things, and it's head to toe for me for the last 15 years. And like I said, everything that is there at the website now, a lot at 50% off, and the fall line starting to roll. And speaking of fall items, because on Wednesdays, we roll out the club. We open the club, Club 5. It's our own kind of hot list, hot index, very small divisor, guys who are doing things that you're going, okay, he's trending, like really, really trending. And the recipient at the end of the year, whoever wins Club 5, will be that jacket, that walnut window pane jacket that on August 15th you can purchase yourself at petermillar.com. Whoever wins Club 5's power rankings will not have to go to the website because it will be delivered to their home. And right now, there's a strong lean where it's going. But with that, let's open up the club. And the guy at number 5 has been quite comfortable in the club. That is Russell Henley. He's having the best, most productive year of his career, and it's going to end by being on that United States Ryder Cup team. Most top 10s he's had in a season, and he's got a lot of starts left. He's already got 9. His last 4 starts, a 5th, a 10th, a 2nd, and a 10th. Those are 2 signature series events and 2 major championships. Not to mention he won a signature series event back in March at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, comfortably in the club. Another guy, another dog in the club, Harris English, a second in a major championship. Even though his top 10 haul is not as significant as Russell Henley's, he too has a win this year. He won at the Farmers Insurance Open. Those 2 best results in major championships, also a next level for him. He also is going to be on that United States Ryder Cup team. So he, number 4 in the club, and a guy announcing his presence on a Wednesday morning in the club, Chris Gotterup, Jersey strong, quite comfortable getting into the club. He wins the Scottish Open, playing with Rory McIlroy, and then he backs it up because he won the Scottish Open. He gets into the Open Championship, and you're going, well, come on, just have a nice week. That will be a fun little story. What does he do? He finishes 3rd alone. So now he not only launches himself to 23rd in the FedEx Cup standings, he's entered the Ryder Cup conversation, and it's not unreasonable because you want hot players. And again, the captain is constructing a team, and it's not based on, well, who is in the top 12 at the end of the year. That's why he has 6 captain's picks. So he's at number 3. At number 2, guy's having the dream year because if he did nothing else other than winning the Masters, it would have been that. But he also won the Players. He won at Pebble Beach. And if you look at the last 3 starts for Rory McIlroy, he was 6 at the Travelers. He was the guy who was trying to chase down Chris Gotterup at the Scottish. And then he never really got himself in position to put heat on Scottie Scheffler, but he finishes 7th at the Open Championship. So he is 2nd. Is it possible that he could get to that guy? Because if you ever gotten to, and I know most of you have, you get to that railroad crossing and the gate comes down, you're going, how long is this going to take? And it's a freight train and it just keeps going. And you're like, when is this going to end? Scottie Scheffler is that freight train because every single car that passes is a top 10. 11 in a row, 2 majors, 4 wins. The guy is unrelenting. He's number 1 in every important statistical category, ball striking wise. And oh, by the way, the guy who was outside the top 170 in putting is now 21st. 2nd in scrambling, 1st in bounce backs, going to win the Varden Trophy. That jacket is likely going to the Metroplex in Dallas, and he would look great at all those holiday parties he will not attend. I don't know how anybody is going to take that jacket away from him. I'm guessing a 46 long. I know he's got a green jacket, but it's not in his possession because he hasn't won the most recent Masters. So there is your Club 5 on a Wednesday, and who knows, next week will be interesting, and don't know that we're going to have any movement at all, because look at the 3M. And here's the truth about the 3M, because the next 2 weeks are about jobs. It's not about Club 5. It's not about the Ryder Cup, so to speak, even though I would say the guy who is the highest ranked in the FedEx Cup standings, if he has another good week, I think it fortifies his chances of being on the team, and that is Maverick McNeely, who's 11th in the FedEx Cup standings. There are only 4 players in the field at the 3M in the top 30 in the FedEx Cup standings. Chris Gotterup is 23rd, and I was a little bit surprised that he was playing, but I give him credit. He's got to be gassed. By the way, Chris Gotterup will be on this program next week when he exhales and takes a week off. So this week, the 3M, next week, the Wyndham Championship. And one great thing, we were talking a couple weeks ago about the Wyndham Championship because of the date change that the Rocket Mortgage is getting, that is going to be right around this time next year. That the Wyndham Championship, and to their credit, because it's earned, because Mark Brazel and their great staff and Bobby Long, who has been the driving force of creating the identity of what that event is, because it has such great history in Greensboro, North Carolina, with the JCs and going all the way back to whether it's Starmount or where it currently is at Sedgefield and Forest Oaks. The fact is that these 2 weeks, the 3M this week and next week at the Wyndham, it's about jobs. Because the truth is, and I don't mean to be dark about this, but it's just the damn truth, that there are guys playing this week and there are guys playing next week that when they finish those events, because they are way outside the top 100, meaning they are not going to be fully exempt on the PGA Tour, that they may be, and there are some who are playing their last events on the PGA Tour, because that's just the truth of it. The attrition of it, the fact that once you get there or you don't fall back or do fall back and are relegated back to the Korn Ferry Tour, there are many that never return. The competition, the next wave of talent. So when you look at players this week, and I was looking at, and it's not like Sahith Theegala, who's currently at 140, and that's surprising because a lot of people, including myself, looked at him as somebody who was going to be one of the better players on the PGA Tour, and he likely still will be, but he's having an ebb, and it's been a season-long ebb. So he finds himself not only in peril of not making the playoffs, but he's at 140th. Max Homa. Max Homa is going to play plenty. Max Homa is going to be on the PGA Tour. He's 102nd. So he's at that certain threshold because we know we are going from 125 to 100. But then as it pertains to that threshold of 70, because 70 now is what qualifies you as being, quote, a playoff team. Look at some of the names right around it. Emiliano Grillo, who's at 71st. Eric Cole, 73rd. Keith Mitchell, Kashmir Keith, is 70th. Those guys need good weeks to fortify themselves and give themselves some comfort of knowing they're going to at least be in Memphis. These next 2 weeks are very different from what last week certainly was, and even the week before, a co-sanctioned event with some of the best players in the world. This week and next week, this is professional golf. This is the idea of real pressure about jobs, pressure about, my God, where am I going to be playing? Pressure about, oh my God, I mean, am I going to have something going forward that I believe is a future at the highest level? So I'm not trying to say you should watch this because it matters as much. Believe me, for a lot of the players in this field, it matters much more than hardware that guys like Scottie Scheffler or Rory McIlroy or anybody else at the top of the food chain are trying to win on a weekly basis. These are very, very compelling weeks. And this is how the PGA Tour should build these weeks. Employment. That's compelling stuff. All right, when we come back, what has not been compelling are the picks of most of the people who contribute to 5 clubs. It doesn't mean they're not qualified. It just means we struggle in that department. You know who doesn't struggle? Dogs. Their lives are glorious. They make our lives better because they exist. We roll out Dogs of the Week our picks as well as we continue this Wednesday edition. 5 Clubs on Golf Channel, also Channel 92, Sirius XM's PGA Tour Radio. Back after this. There's no better way for us to walk out this door on a Wednesday as we end our week to see those images. That's why we ask you, if you've got a dog that's got any relationship with the game of golf, you take them to the range. You're a superintendent at a club. I actually saw a little video from Houston Country Club yesterday, because they're getting ready to do a restoration under the eye of Andrew Green, and the superintendent had his dog on his cart with him. That dog looks so at home where he was on that golf cart. That's why Dogs of the Week means so much to us. Send them in, dogs@5clubsgolf.com. This segment brought to you by Golf Pride. If you need trust in your grips, the materials and the options, nobody is trusted by more players at every level around the world more than Golf Pride. Our Dogs of the Week, I got a feeling this batch is going to be outstanding. So here we go. Our first dog, that is Jackson. The owners are Mary and Mac McRae. He's a 4-year-old Airedale Terrier there at Southern Pines Golf Club on the left, and on the right, enjoying that homemade putting green in Blairsville, Georgia. This is majestic. From left to right, Winston Scout and Oxford, that's Devin Powers, their owner, walking the 16th fairway at Roaring Gap. That's as good a day as you will ever have. That is Greg Sandlin with his 2 kids, Cam and Samantha Sandlin. They play college golf. The dogs on the left, Bunker on the right, is Remington. That's at Moon Valley Country Club in Phoenix, Arizona. That is Skye, a border collie, a direct descendant of border collies from the Isle of Skye in Scotland. On the course at Alexandria Bay Municipal Course in upstate New York, that is Mike Cochran's dog. And finally, Charlie Bauman's dog, a senior, 13-year-old Dachshund and Coonhound mix at the Lido at the Sand Valley Resort in Wisconsin. That is Wyatt. Those are the Dogs of the Week. Send your dog in. We've got a lot that we've got online to be celebrated. We'll get to all of them. We'll do a whole week of just dogs. I will come on and start with Dogs of the Week and end the week with Dogs of the Week. Send them in, dogs@5clubsgolf.com. One thing I did want to mention before we finish up here is obviously our picks, because even though you go, well, this is not very good, come on, you never know when you can complete a Hail Mary, because when we look at the standings right now in terms of who's having a good year, Taylor's having a very solid year. Taylor, by the way, Taylor Zarzer, immersed now as the radio voice of the Tennessee Titans. He has got 3 wins, so does Johnson Wagner. He's kind of stalled out. Emma Carpenter, who's doing a lot of work at the 3M up there in Minnesota, where she played college golf. Gil has moved ahead of me, which means that I'm awful. Because Gil, since he couldn't pick Scottie Scheffler, has been terrible, but he nudged ahead of me, and there is Brendan DeYoung, having one of the most dubious, despicable seasons, picking players to win golf tournaments in the history of 5 clubs, and we're only 7 months old. All right, with that being said, let's get to our picks for the 3M Open. I'm going with the aforementioned Emiliano Grillo, second at the John Deere a couple of weeks ago, right there in the Midwest. He was 24th last year at this event. He was 10th in 2023. Gil Hanse plays chalk, plays the highest ranked player in the FedEx Cup standings, Maverick McNeely. We've got an idiot trifecta, I mean that lovingly, with Sam Burns. Why not? Emma Carpenter, Taylor, and Johnson Wagner all playing Burns. And then Jay Billis plays the hot hand, and Chris Gotterup. And Brendan DeYoung, I'm sorry, Tony, Brendan has picked you to win this event. If you do, that would be one of the more extraordinary things that we've seen in golf, not only this year, maybe ever. Those are our picks for the 3M Open. Before we are finished, I do want to mention over the weekend, somebody whose voice was a big part of covering the game of golf for decades and decades passed away, Bob Bubka. And I had the good fortune of being around Bob a fair amount because he covered all the big events. And Bob had an affection for players in the game that was genuine. He loved covering golf, and he loved the people in golf. And obviously, the people in golf loved him back. And so his affection for the game of golf was it was infectious. And so his passing comes with great sadness, but his voice, which was so strong and so sturdy and so built to deliver whatever it is that he was going to say, primarily via the radio waves, Bob was built to do what he did. A life well led in a vocation and a pursuit covering the game of golf that was with the best intentions. Godspeed to a good man. For all of us here at Five Clubs, we hope you have a great rest of your week. It's the end of July. For those folks in Chicagoland, if you see a wispy little guy topping it off the tee at about 104 miles an hour, that would be me going to play some golf in a city that I've not played much. Looking forward to all of it, and looking forward to Monday getting back at it with a lot of great guests, including Chris Gotterup, who will join us for Signature Sports and the Five Clubs family. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you Monday.